The world was filled with mixed emotions on May 8, 2025. As the white smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel, many stood in awe and others in uncertainty. For the first time in history, an American had been elected as Pope, Robert Francis Prevost. A cardinal and former missionary in Peru, was chosen to lead the Catholic Church. He took the name Pope Leo XIV. At first, his election sparked excitement and hope. People from different walks of life, from churches to streets, spoke about a fresh chapter for the Church. The media was quick to call it a turning point. They hailed him as the Pope from Latin America, pointing out the unique blend of American origins and Latin missionary experience. His calm, humble nature and reputation for working among the poor made many hopeful. But as days passed, the reactions began to change. Not long after the announcement, powerful waves of disagreement began to surface. Some welcomed him with open arms, while others labeled him as a sign of scandal. For many, he was the Pope the Church had long waited for, someone who understood people's pain, someone simple and honest. But for others, he became a symbol of danger, even heresy. There was talk of schism. There were murmurs that he could break the Church from within. What began as a peaceful start soon turned into one of the most divided moments in recent Vatican history. From the first hours of his papacy, Pope Leo XIV made his intentions clear. His tone was soft, but his mission was firm. He spoke of peace, unity, and service to the poor. His very first speech was not full of grand statements, but instead carried one strong message, that we are all in the hands of God and we should walk together without fear. Many saw this as a declaration of his mission, but it was what followed next that really began to stir the world. Pope Leo's plan, while not shouted from rooftops, began to reveal itself through quiet but determined actions. The first major theme was decentralization. He didn't want every decision to be controlled in Rome. Instead, he wanted to empower local bishops and church leaders, especially in countries from the global south, Africa, Latin America, parts of Asia, to make decisions suited to their unique realities. This, he believed, would make the Church more real, more connected, and more human. Then came reform. Pope Leo started to reshape the way bishops were selected. He emphasized spiritual depth over ambition or connections. There were also whispers of changes within the Vatican finances. Audits were being discussed. A full restructuring of the Vatican Bank, also known as the Institute for the Works of Religion, was being considered. These were big moves, but they weren't the most controversial. The real fire began with the topics that have divided the Church for decades: the role of women, the place of LGBT+ people in the Church, celibacy, and the participation of lay people in Church decision-making. Though the Pope did not make direct changes yet, he made it clear these would be openly discussed in the next synod, and that alone was enough to send shockwaves across the globe. One particular issue sparked the strongest backlash: the document, called Fiducia Supplicans, which allowed for non-sacramental blessings of same-sex couples, had already stirred controversy during Pope Francis's time. Pope Leo did not reject this document. In fact, he seemed open to allowing each bishop to decide whether or not to bless same-sex couples based on their local culture and situation. For many traditional Catholics, this was unacceptable. They feared it would lead to a church that no longer had a single truth. What might be wrong in one country could be accepted in another. To them, this broke the very foundation of Catholic teaching, its universality. One of the loudest voices against Pope Leo came from Brother Alexis Bugnolo, a known critic who runs a Catholic website. He released a viral video claiming that Pope Leo's election was not valid. He argued that the Pope was a heretic because of his support for the blessing of same-sex couples. Bugnolo quoted an old church law from 1559, which stated that if a known heretic is elected pope, the election is automatically invalid. He called Pope Leo XIV an anti-pope, meaning someone falsely claiming to be pope. This accusation was dramatic and drew attention quickly, even though the Church itself did not support his claim. But it wasn't just from within the Catholic Church that criticism came. Protestant leaders also had harsh words. Some well-known figures like Voddie Baucham and John MacArthur condemned the Pope's actions, calling them unbiblical and idolatrous. For many in the Protestant world, the entire idea of a pope is already rejected. They believe no man should take a position that stands between people and Christ. They saw Pope Leo as someone pushing a progressive agenda, using spiritual language to hide political goals. Some said his talk of unity and brotherhood sounded more like universalism than Christian faith, as if all religions are the same, and Christ is no longer the only way. When it became known that the new pope was not only American, but from Chicago, the reaction from the American right was explosive. Steve Bannon, a former advisor to President Trump, immediately accused the Vatican of conspiracy. He claimed that Pope Leo had been chosen by globalists to attack American values and undermine conservatives. He wasn't alone. Others like Laura Loomer and various ultra-conservative voices echoed the claim. They called the Pope a woke puppet, a left-wing pope, and even a progressive in white robes. What especially upset these groups were Pope Leo's past comments about American immigration policy. He had openly criticized the separation of families at the border and warned against using religion as a political tool. One specific moment triggered outrage. When Vice President J.D. Vance had once said, "Love your family first, then your neighbor," Pope Leo had responded sharply, "Christian love does not make rankings." That one sentence sparked a storm. To many conservatives, it confirmed their fears that this pope would stand against them, not with them. Some commentators even said the Vatican had declared war on MAGA, the Make America Great Again movement. They worried that Pope Leo's vision would erase traditional American values from the Church's global identity. They feared a church that would no longer reflect the ideals they believed in: strong families, clear rules, and moral certainty. They accused the Pope of pushing climate change, LGBT+ rights, and social justice at the cost of traditional doctrine. Inside the Church, the reactions were not any calmer. While some conservative cardinals did express support for Pope Leo, even Cardinal Robert Sarah, a known traditionalist, called his election a sign from the Holy Spirit, others were deeply uncomfortable. They feared that under the appearance of calm, the Pope was launching a quiet revolution. The idea of giving more power to local churches scared them. The idea of discussing celibacy or women's roles in the Church felt like walking toward chaos. And the possibility of blessing same-sex couples? That was too much. On the other side, more progressive Catholics celebrated the Pope. Parish priests from poor neighborhoods, theologians advocating for modern reforms, and Catholic social movements all cheered the Pope's message. They believed this was the moment the Church could finally become what Christ wanted it to be: close to the people, open to the broken, and less tied to power and rules. To them, Pope Leo was a shepherd, not a king. This divide between progressives and conservatives, between North and South, between tradition and change, was nothing new. But under Pope Leo, it had exploded like never before. The Church had long spoken about the risk of schism, a formal break in unity. Now that risk felt real, people weren't just arguing over policy. They were questioning each other's faith, each other's right to even belong to the same church. Some believed Pope Leo would be the great healer. Others feared he might be the one to break it apart. Still, the Pope has not rushed. He has not made sudden announcements or overturned church teachings. Instead, he has moved gently but firmly. He is listening. He is giving space for others to speak. But he has made clear that certain topics will not be avoided. Whether that leads to deeper understanding or deeper division remains to be seen. There are those who hope Pope Leo will bring reconciliation, healing the old wounds while gently guiding the Church toward a better future. They believe his focus on walking together, a concept called synodality, will build a church that listens more, judges less, and acts with love. They see in him the spirit of Jesus walking among the people, not ruling from a throne. But there are also those who fear he will leave the Church unrecognizable. They worry that by listening too much,